All right, everyone. So we are with another episode of the Soccer Performance Podcast. We have another international guest. We have Josh Bridge here. Josh is currently working with Premier League side Nottingham Forest. Previously, he was with the Everton Boys Academy. So this will be a really exciting episode. Josh will have a lot of good insight to bring to the viewers. So I hope you enjoy it. Josh, welcome. And do you mind giving us a short and sweet intro of you?
Yeah, spot on. First of all, thanks for having me, and glad we could get it in the diary. I suppose when I answer this question, I always go back to my first exposure to S&C, and that was back in my playing days. So I played at Cat 1 Academy. Didn't quite make it, but that's when I first got exposed to kind of physical profiling and some basic S&C.
From which club was that, Josh? Was Barnsley or?
Yeah, that was over at Barnsley. Not as big now, but back then they were decent academy, so they were Cat 1, so it was a good level. After that, college, moved on to LGMU, Sports and Exercise Science, 3-year undergrad there. I was really lucky in second and third year, so again, kind of my first exposure to football S&C. I was over at Preston North End, so I did summer internships with them over with Dr. Tom Little. Again, that's a really lucky little story. I was just training in a local gym. Tom is from the area that I'm from. Got speaking to him, just didn't even know who he was, and he said that and ended up going to Preston with their first team. So 2 really useful summers doing internships with them, which kind of put me towards the S&C and the football environment. After that, obviously, went on to do MSc in strength and conditioning. It was a debut kind of year for it at Liverpool John Moores. Worked with Maz, yourself, and then lots of other great practitioners who've gone on to do other things. That was with Dr. Dave Clark, and then also alongside that LGMU internship with Dr. Carl Langan-Evans. Again, loads of knowledge from that, but also kind of the softer skills and the coaching skills, which prepped us to go into the environment. I suppose first kind of exposure after that was my internship as part of the MSc. I was with the Everton Women's, so with both the first team and the 21s. So I started there. Luckily, at the end of that became a job. So I did a good job for them. That was my first job. So that was with the kind of reserve team for the women's. Picked up the men's academy, like we said, so that was on casual role to start with, and then after that I also picked up the RTC with the women, so that was in 9 to 16, so I was kind of working 3 different roles. The following year became more kind of part-time with the men's academy, so I moved into that, and then I also picked up the TAS role as well. So that is the Talented Athlete Scholarship Scheme that was over at Liverpool John Moores University. As part of that, I was working with like elite pathway guys, so that was individual sports, so it's more like your Olympic sports, and it kind of was from anyone from team sports to individual stuff. Worked with loads of people, so archers, double mini trampoline, rugby, and then disability sports as well, so CP football, blind football, and wheelchair basketball. Again, really rewarding and challenging coaching environments to be working in, as you can imagine. With the blind stuff, really got to be using like audio coaching cues, and definitely learned my left and rights pretty quick with that. After that, more full-time with the men's academy, or part-time, but more based there. Obviously, I carried on with the other roles that I was doing, and then that came to this summer, or earlier on in the summer, where the Nottingham Forest job became available. Applied for that, was lucky enough to get it, and then that took me to the start of this season where I moved over there. Really enjoyed what I've been doing there so far. It's a challenging and stimulating environment for me, and I think it suits my coaching role. I was saying to Mario before, I'm pretty much looking after the gym work. So I kind of live in the gym there, and that's probably suits me as a coach, I'd say.
That's awesome.
Cool. So so obviously you were working in more of an academy setting. Now you're in the first team. What we try to hit home here, like obviously the training, when you have a youth player, the training is quite different than if you have a first team player. And yeah. I imagine, you've experienced that firsthand. What would you say is major key differences between what you were kind of doing in the academy and then now, I mean, it's Premier League, you're getting them ready for every weekend match, sometimes twice a week. So
Yeah, it's a great point. I think the main difference is that in the Premier League, in a first team environment, we're looking for that kind of performance here and now on the day, and a big lean on injury prevention as well, which again comes under our strength work. But as with the academy, it's more kind of that long-term development of the athlete over, of course, a more chronic time, and giving them the skills to hopefully progress to first team football. So that's probably the main differences that I've got there.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Can you go into more like, then I want to touch in deeper. Well, what are kind of your injury prevention things look like? Like, let's say your checklist, what are like things you have to hit every week or you try to hit every week? Some important things, whether that's an exercise or type of training that you guys do.
Yeah, definitely. So our program, we break it down. It's quite a unique program. So we do a 4-day building. So if it's a typical 1 week, we'll go play Saturday, so off Sunday, Monday, let them recover away from the club. Some of them will come in on a match day plus 2. Then we go Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday into our Saturday game. Mm-hmm. So that gives us 2 big days, match day -3, match day -4, to get after them physically. So 2 sessions that we'll do and I'll do in the gym. One will be our like robustness, injury prevention stuff, which will be our eccentric day. So that's where we'll probably chase an eccentric stimulus in pretty much all the lower limb muscle groups. And then the second session will be our concentric. So it'll be our fast lifts, our velocity-based stuff, plyometrics, and some yielding and overcoming isometrics. If it's a 2-game week, we will always chase that eccentric stimulus. So we may lose out on the concentric session, or that may sneak into like a pre-training regime. That's how we'll work it. And then post-match as well, we'll always chase that eccentric stimulus. So that's kind of how we frame it, and that's what we look at as our injury prevention. And up until now, we have done, touch wood, very good with soft tissue injuries. We've been over 95%.
That's really interesting, because I feel like, from what I've heard from other practitioners, they'd kind of be scared to, in a 2-game week, generally they really cut back the gym work, and I feel like they'd be scared to use that eccentric session because of the muscle fatigue and damage. So I guess you must have found the opposite. You must have found that didn't hinder performance at all.
Definitely try not to let the players go in sore, but we get it in where we can. So definitely after the game where we've used it.
Right.
And we'll always split the group in terms of your starters, your non-starters, and most of the time we'll find a way to get it in. And like, especially the head of sports science and the doc there, they're huge on it. That's what they want to do. If they see a soft tissue injury, they'll be, how long since he's done this? How long since he's done his eccentrics? If it's hamstring injury, how long since we've got recorded Nordic on it? Yeah, it's an interesting way of looking at it, but it seems to have, it's definitely worked with us, and it's done well so far.
Josh, for somebody who may not have a physiology background, what can you explain in layman's terms what you mean by eccentrics? Like what an exercise would look like? I just maybe like a brief overview of what a typical workout, if that's the focus, would be.
Yeah, definitely. So a couple of ways we can go about the eccentric. So we try and get some kind of super maximal eccentric, which means that we essentially couldn't do the concentric in that movement. So that's something like our Nordic hamstring curl. Mm-hmm. So we're asking the athletes to lower themselves down. It's hard to say, speak about the setup, but the setup basically, so the hamstring, you're going to lock in with the ankles, and all you can do is lower yourself down. So really hard to do the concentric as well. So this would be a max out eccentric. And again, we'll dose that quite low. So that'll be maybe from 3 sets of 2, maxing out probably 3 sets of 4. Okay. So that'll be like a hamstring example. Again, reverse Nordics, or that'll be similar for the quad. Or we can go stuff like 2 to 1, so leg extension. So we're going to come up with 2. We're going to go down with 1 leg. So again, that's our super maximum. And then we just do stuff like your tempo work. So it'll be like an RDL, and all we're going to do is go a 5 second on the lower phase.
Right.
Yeah. So they're the ones that we'll chase. And we've also got K-pulley systems and your K-box systems. So that's kind of, you've seen them, haven't you? Have you use them?
Yeah.
We don't have them here, but yeah.
No, so yeah, we're quite big on that. So our K-pulley and K-box stuff, all that's going to, it's like a spin system of K-pulley, and then all it's going to do is overload the eccentric. So an example of what we'll do is like a K-box squat, so hand supported really fast on the concentric. That's going to spin the wheel, overload the eccentric, and then they've got a break on the eccentric.
Right.
So like a typical session might be, just for example, eccentric split squat, tempo work, Nordic 2-to-1 quad, and then we might go K-box squat, and then we'll hit a calf and soleus for tempo. So,
Right. Well,
I mean, for the
sorry, go on.
I was going to say, for the listeners at home, so obviously, you may not have access to like high-end equipment like that, but go towards the things Josh was saying that you can do, like pretty much any exercise, a split squat or an RDL, where you can just tempo the lift slowly on the eccentric 5 seconds. And Nordics, you can pretty much do it anywhere. You could just have a partner holding your ankles. And so, I mean, anyone at home, don't worry if you don't have that technology. There's always something that you can do, whether that's a Nordic and then slow the tempo of the split squat or the RDL. But yeah, really interesting stuff.
Mario,
you wanted to say something?
Yeah, just because I know, I mean, again, and you guys are experts in this field, but I know it's sometimes difficult for players to understand the difference in tempo and why you do things slow. And when you're a young player, everything just looks like a squat is a squat. So what really is the focus in slowing things down in that way? And then on the contrary, what's the or not the focus, but the benefit, and what's the benefit of doing things quickly? What is the reason why you approach, a Nordic slow versus a box jump fast, right? I think a lot of players misunderstand the real reason why tempo is so important.
Is that you or me, Mario?
I'll start it, I guess. So yeah, I mean, I think because of Instagram, players are obsessed with doing everything fast and explosive, but there's benefits from super slow tempo training, and there's benefits from that explosive training. So, and you could see Josh pointed out they do both, right? So they're hitting both sides of that spectrum. And then that slow eccentric training, especially the Nordic, there's a lot of research out there to say that, it really helps in preventing hamstring strain injuries, which we know is very common in soccer.
So would you guys say that eccentrics is mainly focused on injury prevention, and then your concentric movements are more on creating these abilities, right? Speed, power, explosiveness. Mm-hmm. And so the combination of both in programs is what creates balance, right? You have a degree of maintenance work for injury, and then you have a degree of performance work for the actual, on play stuff.
Yeah,
simply put, yeah, I guess, yeah.
I think
there's more gray area, but yeah, go ahead, Josh.
Yeah, so much research out there. So you're fast and you slow eccentrics, you're fast and you slow concentrics. And like you said, I think if we can blend them all, you're going to get certain adaptations to your different stimuluses. And for me, your training is all about your tempos. So depending on how you program it, that depends what stimulus and what adaptation you're going to get. So we blend, like we said, our slow eccentrics, more injury prevention. Fast eccentrics, we base that on decelling, change of direction. And then our fast concentrics for our acceleration. And then we do stuff like overcoming we're getting quite complicated now, but like overcoming isometrics, looking at like max speed and top speed stuff. And we always try and feed this back to the players in how that'll affect the pitch. So like we said, eccentric decel, concentric stuff for acceleration, and then some of our ISO stuff for our top speed.
Very interesting.
Really good. Before we get into the academy stuff, Josh, you want to give an example of what a fast eccentric would be then?
Yeah.
For you guys?
Yeah. So the progressions we've started with, so literally a tall to short loaded dumbbell, or you can go for like your altitude lands. So up on a box, straight down, land, and decel quick. So it's like
absorb, nice quiet landing, really absorb, yeah.
Yeah, so we go from you absorb, so soft landing, to can we make it fast and can we make it like a harder landing, but still getting that flexion at the knee and the hip and decelling quick. So now we progress that onto like a trap bar. So we'll load up on a trap bar, up onto the toes, decel quick. And then we've gone split. So now up onto your toes, can you split? So now it's more unilateral and you're in those decel positions.
Mm-hmm. So really good stuff. So to provide context, this is kind of what we're looking at first team training.
Yeah.
So like obviously there's prerequisites to get there. These players would have done, several years of building foundational strength and stuff like that. Can we go a little more detail than kind of what you were doing in the academy system? What would their program look more like? I guess we could discuss throughout the week. I know it's more development focused, but generally what would that look like more? And we could contrast that to what the first team stuff.
Yeah, so the academy, I suppose the program setup that we had, it changed because of COVID, but we had, I think, 3 nights a week plus a game day. And we'd have gym time with them, pre-training every session for 14s, 15s, 16s, and then I think 13s, 12s had a little bit less. 18s had their own coach who I think they were in 2-3 times a week. In terms of the program, what we had was kind of like a, what's the word for it? So like a scale, Mario, you'll know, like a scale from your like foundation skills and how you can progress each one. Mm-hmm. So your fundamental movements. So we'll start with like, I don't know, your squat variations. So body weight squat, and then progress that through to our overhead squat, for example. That was the setup that we had at Everton. And essentially we wanted to give the players all these skills and all these techniques. So by the time that it got to the performance side, so 16s, probably 18s, that we can make a kind of give them their individual program based off that. And we know that they've got those skills in the locker.
Makes sense. So what Josh was talking about there was like a progression. So they starting from, you could say, level 0, a body weight squat, and and as the player is competent in each level, they will progress. And, by the time they are 16 to 18, then we can start having that conversation about the more advanced stuff, the more tempoed stuff, the explosive stuff. I think people at home will see on Instagram the fun stuff and go straight to that, but they can't even do that bodyweight squat. And we see that a lot here. And I'm sure you've seen that a lot in your gym. So really having to bring it back. And even if you are 16 to 18, but you have no background in strength training, you will have to go back to the basics, even though at that age, you would hope to be doing the more advanced stuff. So I hope that brings some context to what we're talking about here.
Definitely. And I think people start at different levels as well. It's not just you're this age, you'll be able to do that. Some people may not have the mobility requirements or movement competency to be able to do something. You might get someone in the gym who's really well. You're happy with where they're at and you start loading them a little bit quicker and bringing those more advanced kind of more advanced stimulus and different exercises a little bit earlier. So it's definitely based on the individual. But in that academy setting, it's much more of a process and you've got a little bit more time with the players to build them up to get those kind of performance gains.
It's interesting because, our demographic, and I'm saying the people that are listening to our conversations and stuff are not necessarily, academy players. Right. And so it's just for us, it's very important to kind of shed light to the day-to-day of an academy player and how much, goes into the training. Right. And so I think a lot of players, and I come across, right, I run a private gym. So I come across a lot of great players that realize, and then they want to take it upon themselves to improve in all aspects of their game. And you see so many movement deficits and so many things that you understand that injuries come from just poor quality movement foundations, right? So it's for us, I think, when you're in an academy setting, you have pretty much the guidance of all these different coaches in different fields. But when you're not at that level and you're trying to improve, we want to make sure that players are taking away from these conversations that focusing on gym work, focusing on technical work, focusing on all these things as a young player, like Mario was saying, doesn't need to be complicated, right? There's so many resources. Do basic training well, and I think that that's the foundation to, like you said, from U14 to U15. At U15, you're probably going to learn something in all aspects of training. So you never end up leaving those basics. Josh, a quick question to you. What do you find, for example, a player like Richie Larea comes over from Canada?
Yeah.
What do you find? What do you find unique about North American players? What do you find that they have or that they lack versus, like, your European players that are coming in and out all the time?
So with Richie, I've only worked with him for a few weeks, and from what I've seen from him, really good. And obviously he's been in with you and been in the gym with you. He's, in terms of his gym work with me, he was spot on, and he's decent physically as well. And like we were saying before, I think he's in and around that level, and you've seen him playing for Canada last night. He was class, really good, and physically he's good. In terms of the European players that we have, you see it so different from player to player and from your different regions as well. So like your French boys, they're really into it. Yeah. They'll have that through the full academy level, and they'll have it through obviously first team. It'll be pushed well. I'd say most of your English clubs now will be pushing it pretty good, and you can see the players coming in, and they've got a good level to them, and they've got a good understanding as well. And then you get different places. Germany, some clubs do it, some clubs don't do it. So we can get players coming in who have never done S&C really before, quite inexperienced in it, and then you get another club from the same country who is really experienced in it. So I suppose it's, again, going back to that academy talk, it's if you've been at an academy and you've had that kind of experience and exposure to it, you're at a massive advantage when you're kind of going into that first team environment.
Definitely.
One question I want to ask you, Josh. Any, since entering the first team environment, and especially at the Premier League level, anything that surprised you or something that really caught your interest about the physical demands of that level and in that league?
For me, it's the speed of the league, and I think even watching the World Cup now, even when I'm watching a few of the games, I'm just thinking it looks really, really slow. And it's so unique in terms of the speed and the intensity of kind of the outputs of the players. And obviously we've got to prep them for that. So in our program, everything is intensity based and it's on the clock. So we're looking at, can we get kind of outputs above or at game level within their training? So that's kind of how we look at it, and can we prep them for that kind of intensity? And you see with the players that are coming over, they're just not used to the speed of the Premier League, even compared to your big European leagues. It is it's next level at the minute, I think.
So I think.
Sorry, Mario.
Yeah, go ahead, Juan.
Quick question on that. I mean, how much of that? I really want to know. You have such an inside look. How much of that style of play comes from fitness, and then how much comes from just the mentality of the player?
Yeah.
How fit do you really have to be? I mean, it seems incredible, the Premier League, the amount of fitness that they're able to make pretty much full effort sprints in the last minutes of the game.
Yeah, it's crazy. The fit boys, when we do the fitness testing, they're all good. There isn't anyone who's bad. And I think that gets pushed as kind of it is a key performance indicator for them. It's something that they need, but I think it's pushed quite well in terms of the technical program in the game itself. They're getting exposed to it all the time. But then the speed, that's definitely something that's increased in recent years. Like looking at the max speed of the players that you think are slow running 10 meters per second. And it's just like, people like us wouldn't get close to that. Well, speaking for myself anyway, I'm Mario.
Yeah, me too, especially.
I think I'm probably on the same boat.
Yeah. So, okay. So you touched on there, and me and Juan and I, try and spoke on that. So a lot of that exposure, that fitness exposure, comes from playing the game, because I imagine in training, even the technical and tactical training sessions are physically demanding. They are requiring players to play at a high tempo.
Yeah.
A lot of intent. Can you touch on that? If you are able to, kind of what that's supposed to look like, because we really try and hammer home how, get that technical training down right first, play and train at a high tempo, and that will take you quite far, actually.
Yeah, for sure. Going back to our program there, and I think most clubs do the same now. So you look at exposing yourself to an extensive day. So to simple that down, it's your longer sprints, your high speed work, your bigger spaces, because again, that's what you're going to be doing on game day. Expose yourself to a intensive day. So that's your accel decels, you change direction. Again, like I said before, in and around what you do in a match, or even more than what you do in a game. And then sprint at least once a week. I think if you're hitting those three within your training, then you can probably judge if you need some extra fitness work as well, because there is a place for it, and we tend to put that in after our extensive days. So I think like your high speed intervals have definitely got a lot of value. That's an easy way to get quite fit in a relatively small amount of time as well.
Mm-hmm. So I think a good theme, I guess, people can take home, see how they took in the demands of the game, and they've broken down into chunks, and then they train those chunks kind of separately. On one day there's the extensive, one day is the intensive, one day is max speed, one day in the gym it's that eccentric work, one day in the gym it's that concentric power work. So I think a lot of people are confused. They think they got to train everything at the same time in one session, but at the highest level, it's really not like that. They're separating all the variables and training them, with maximal, the highest quality. So every day is a very high quality training day. The only thing that changes is the theme. And I think people at home really need to understand that, because here I just see it's like a CrossFit kind of style training. You just do everything at once and hope you get better, when really,
Yeah,
you don't make much progress. So that's just a point I wanted to make there. We've got about 5 minutes left, boys. Anything you want to ask before we close up?
yeah. Like, I mean, I just wanted to kind of go back to that point of intensity. Like, when I think even on the physical side of the game, when you're an academy player, there's so many opportunities to get your fitness in your own technical sessions. And we talk about that in our previous episodes, just how you can combine, and it's a lot of the stuff that I do in the off season, right? Technical work with physical work, so that you're kind of killing two birds with one stone. Obviously, when you have your speed days and when you have your specific days, you're targeting those things, but I don't think that you need a fitness day. And I think a lot of maybe North American players approach it like that. Like, I'm going to go do and work on my fitness. You can always, and then you see how much gap ends up being between these extremely technical, first division players in Europe, that even if you are fit, right, there's such a drastic level of technical competence that I think players really need to hammer home being good on the ball, being a good mover, but to keep it basic, right, to keep it simple.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, great.
No, really good wrap up there. Cool. Any final questions, Juan, for Josh before we wrap up?
Who do you got at the end of the tournament, if you're not biased?
I've got to say England, Anna.
Hey, that was a good game, man.
Yeah. To be fair, we're looking good, and you're seeing other big nations dropping points and struggling. So we've got half a chance at least.
What was the biggest surprise? What did you think about? What did you think? Who's the other group? It's US and Wales, right?
US and Wales, yeah.
What did you think about them?
Good. They'll be decent. I rate them both. we've got 3 lads with Wales as well. So that'll be an interesting one. I'm hoping that it's us and Wales get through.
Nice. Hey, Mario's got a tough one because it's Croatia, Canada.
Oh yeah, of course. Who are you having?
Yeah.
Oh, God. He can't say it on the live.
It's going to be a really interesting game, and whoever wins this game makes it out of the group, and then of course that's what I will have to continue supporting through the rest of the tournament. So it'll be a really interesting game.
Sounds
Yeah,
like,
you've done well.
that sounds like a very Canadian response. So that's where my money's at tomorrow, next game. I mean,
Cool, boys. All right, Josh, anywhere people can look you up. I know you're not very active really on social media, so anyway, if in case anyone has a question for you or wants to creep you.
Probably the best one is Instagram. Josh Bridge, 2 eyes. That is a private one, so just message me, and I'll reply on that.
Cool. Sounds good. All right. Thank you. Boys, I think this was a good episode. I think we have a lot to bring. I think people will find a lot of value. And if you are listening at home, make sure when you're watching this, if you like it, like the YouTube video, subscribe to the channel, share it with those who you might find interesting, your parents, your coaches, your teammates. We're trying to bring a lot of value to the community here. And, the more you share it, the more value we can bring the community. So cool.
thanks, Josh. Again.
All right. Thank you.
Well,
Thanks, boys.
Until next one, boys. Bye.